I will commence the meeting by taking a roll call. With us this evening are the Board of Selectmen. I am Robin Hunter, the chair.
Bob Springer, present.
John Jeffries here.
Also with us is Chris Dwelly, the town administrator, Kate O'Brien, the assistant town administrator. And the first item on the agenda is public comment. Okay, there being none, I am going to turn the meeting over to Chris, and then we will go to Chief McGowan. And Chris, I believe you have an introduction to make.
Thanks, Robin. I appreciate the accommodation this evening. Yes, wanted to formally introduce the board to Bethany Clem, our new library director, who's been with us now going on 2 weeks. Given that the board meets somewhat infrequently during the summer season, I wanted to just give Bethany the opportunity to come by and say hello, and maybe if she'd like, share a few words about her background and some of the things that excite her about Dover, and just really give you and the community an opportunity to say hello to Bethany and welcome her to Dover.
That would be great if you could tell us a little about yourself, Bethany.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. As Chris said, my name is Bethany Clem, and yes, this is the end of week 2 as the new director at the Dover Town Library. It has been such a phenomenal time getting to know the staff, who are really talented and have this fantastic ideas for working with the community. And getting to know a whole lot of people over at Townhouse. So thank you for the warm welcome to everyone I've been able to work with so far this week. I've been in libraries for, I have to count now, 14 years. This is my first time leading one, and it's been a wonderful opportunity to get to see the really big picture, and I'm excited to dive right into seeing all of the ways that the library is serving the community and all of the opportunities to do more and to invent more. So my office is open. I'm always happy to hear from folks, to say hi, chat, and I hope people feel welcome to stop by anytime.
So Bethany, welcome to Dover. We are very happy to have you here. The library is a hub for many in the community. I know for those with young kids, it certainly is, and also for those that are lucky enough to be retired, it is as well. So, we look forward to seeing all the great things that you do, and keeping the library as active as it is within our community. So welcome.
So Bethany, there are people between those dimensions that Robin mentioned who also use the library. My wife happens to be an avid reader and is one. I, on the other hand, drag knuckles and stuff like that. So it just doesn't work. But it really has been a gem for the town. Has a sparkling reputation. It's a vibrant place. There are lots of great programs. I look forward to seeing what you can do to enhance it, maintain it, and continue the traditions that the library has placed in the town. So thank you and welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Hey, Bethany. I'm John Jeffries, and my wife is a kindergarten teacher in the DS system. She's in Sherburne at Pine Hill. And she's also the behavioral specialist for the Pine Hill School, dealing with mostly the pre-K kindergarten kids. She uses the library regularly. She's there all the time. And it is a phenomenal resource for her classroom, for her kids, for all the DS population. And the biggest challenge we've had in the past couple of years, it was closed for a long time during COVID. And that really, really hurt a lot of people. And we really hope you have a plan going forward so that never happens again.
I I would love to see what we can learn from COVID, see what we learned from the pandemic, and about how we can take some of those lessons and hopefully avoid some of the extremes that felt necessary at the time.
So thank you and welcome again.
Thank you so much.
The next item on our agenda is, once again, Chief McGowan is back with us, and you and Chris are both outside, and maybe something that we need to start doing. It looks pretty nice. And I gather you have a new officer that you're going to be appointing this evening?
I do. I have a recommendation for the board. Thank you, Ms. Hunter. I come before you again, hiring a full-time officer. This is the first of our 2 new officers. We have to hire 2 new full-time officers to compensate for the loss of our reserve program. And I'm very pleased to recommend Robert Young. I made a Father's Knows Best joke about him when I hired him, and nobody at the station got it. So we'll just pass over that. Anyways, Rob comes to us with 5 years of experience with the Pawtucket Police Department, and we were able to get his training and all his certifications transferred over to us. So if the board accepts my recommendation, we'll be able to have him hit the ground running the very first part of August, and I expect him to be out on the road meeting people by mid-September. So kind of a interesting fact, his younger brother, Colin, was hired by this board about 3 years ago, and my first time ever working with brothers. Very good family from Franklin, and we're really excited to have him with us.
I don't have any questions. I think you know, again, I feel as though you may have turned over the police force at this point, because you seem to be here almost every other meeting, making a recommendation for a new officer. But you know, I you know, in my experience, all the officers, you really have a great team that you've built, and I would certainly support the hiring of this young man.
Thank you.
So from my perspective, Chief, we talked about this a little bit, I think, at one of our former meetings. You know, the challenges that you face integrating so many new people into the force. I've been there and done that, and so I understand a little bit, not necessarily in the police force, but in private business. So if you're picking good candidates and you have a good team, it should make that whole transition for the new person a lot easier. And if he has his brother on a team, I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. You know?
I'll let you know.
Siblings, you know, sometimes, you know, they may be competing with one another. But
I couldn't work.
Recommendation and the note that you sent sounds like the guy has good experience and it will fit in. And I wish him good luck. And I also would support this.
Great, thank you,
John?
Nothing for me.
All right, so then I move to appoint Officer Robert Young to the Dover Police Department as a full-time police officer, subject to the customary stipulations of the Dover Police Department.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
All right, well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just to stay with the Robert Young theme for a minute, was Jane Wyman the wife?
She was. There you go.
All right.
Look at that.
Hey,
Okay.
Chief, one quick thing to leave you with tonight is I don't think we've had a chance to talk since the Police Association golf outing, the charitable event. I can tell you it was a great success. I had a foursome. I asked Bob Springett if he wanted to be part of that foursome, but he respectfully declined. And I can report to you the good news is your officers are not spending a lot of time on the golf course. I think that's probably the best thing you could hear. It was a great day. Everybody had a lot of fun, and you got a lot of lousy golfers, with the exception of your detective. He's the ringer.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you.
Well, Chief McGowan, I can join your team then. You want to know the lousy golfer I'm at?
I wasn't even invited. That's how bad I golf. So.
Well, maybe you and I should be on a team then.
Don't play against your detective.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Claybrook Road project update and the next steps. And Kevin McCabe, our new DPW director, is going to be making a presentation, I believe.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry about that, some technical difficulties. So
because you're not outside like the others.
Yeah, maybe that's probably it. I have a PowerPoint for you, which I believe Kate is going to be opening up for us here.
Kevin, there are a lot of schematics in that report. I can tell you that.
Certainly is. Great. Thank you, Kate. So yeah, as through the chair, tonight I'm going to be updating the board on the status of the Claybrook Road Bank Stabilization Project, where we're at to date, and where we're looking to take this project. So tonight's agenda will be to discuss some existing conditions, the planning and field investigation work to date, the global stability and feasibility analysis, upcoming design and permitting, and then a potential project timeline. Next slide, please. So the existing conditions, for those of you who do not know, it's located on Claybrook Road at approximately number 140. We're experiencing about 400 feet of instability, of bank instability, particularly two locations within 260 feet of roadway has collapsed. Two locations that span 260 feet, excuse me. And our current traffic pattern is reduced to one lane of alternating traffic. Pictured as one of those two banks that have collapsed into the Charles over the years. Next slide, please. So field investigation and work completed to date. In November of 21, they did wetland resource area delineation. Anybody that knows that area, that'd be the blue and pink taping that you've seen on the vegetation along that bank. In August of 2021, they did geotechnical soil boring exploration, and that would be those black dots represented on that plan to the right where those locations were. And then in February of 22, engaged in a survey of property and topographic and a bathymetric survey. And then in May of 2022, we received that geotechnical feasibility and alternative analysis, the lengthy report, as Mr. Spriggett referred to. Next slide, please. So part of this review process, the design engineer reviewed 4 potential roadway stabilization alternatives. The first of which would be to provide a permanent restraint using a sheet pile wall, which would provide long-term and a permanent solution to our problem on Claybrook. Option number 2 would be to regrade and armor the existing slope at a 2-to-1 slope, which also would provide a long-term and permanent solution. However, would require filling of materials within the Charles River waterway. The third option was to regrade and patch the road to the existing pre-failure existing roadway and slope geometry, which would not provide a long-term solution for Dover. And then option 4 they looked at would be the what if we do nothing alternative, which would continue to degrade into the Charles River, and the roadway would still be down to single lane, alternating oncoming traffic. So basically the summaries, alternatives 3 and 4, to perform no repair or only minor regrade and patching to the road work are insufficient to stabilize a roadway, and the roadway is currently in its condition is unsafe. Alternatives 1 and 2 to either regrade and armor the slope or provide the permanent restraint via sheet piling that would provide us a long-term stabilization of the slope and roadway. Next slide, please. So potential upcoming design and permitting, the recommended alternative would be to do the permanent restraint sheet pile wall with a vegetated bank. So the potential contract that was submitted would be to finalize our geotechnical engineering, to furthermore the hydraulic and hydrologic modeling of the Charles River, to perform and conduct all the regulatory permitting, and to provide all of the necessary construction documents for the bid phasing. Next slide, please.
Hey, hang on, Kevin. Can you explain to the public the different gradations on that former slide? Where the pile would be, where the wall would be, what the green is, please?
So basically, the yellow would be proposed fill. The orange tint, it would basically be the natural layer right now of the Charles River and the roadway. And the red line would be the projected where the sheet piling would be. And the green represents riprap, a combination of fill and riprap.
Okay, so what is the sheet pile, did you say?
That would be that red line where it basically makes that step.
What is it composed of? Is it metal, metal?
Yes, it
metal
would be
forced into the ground?
precisely.
Supported by pillars?
Yes, basically 25-foot sections of steel, PZ25 steel that they would pile drive into the ground.
Okay.
And then within that line, they would basically take out all the loose fill, put in new materials, backfill and compact up into layers to provide a permanent stabilized roadway bank.
Thank you very much.
Next slide, please. And then, so the potential project timeline. Tonight, I'd be looking for the Board of Selectmen to vote to approve the contract that I provided for a sum of $178,000. The funding source from that would be from my Chapter 90 fund, which is money that we receive annually through through MassDOT. In the red summarizes what that number's comprised of and all the different phases. And the potential timeline would be from an executed contract approximately 8 months to have basically the project bid. And then also the $1 million question, how are we going to fund this thing? So potential funding sources would be obviously annual town meeting 2023, ARPA funding, potential transportation bond bills, MVP type 3 construction grant. That opens up typically in May.
So is that MVP construction grant, is that similar to what we did over at Dedham Street for the bridge? Is that
correct? That was we put in for a type 2, which is for design and regulatory permitting, and type 3 would be for, we would have shovel ready project to bid.
Okay, and I'm not going to hold you to this, but typically what percentage of the cost would these grants cover if approved? And give me a range so that nobody holds you to it.
Basically, the MVP grant goes up to $1 million. So that could potentially, depending on what bids come in, cover the entire project. Chris can speak to an email that we received this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So happy to just share as we talk about funding opportunities. We did put in through our Senator Roush's office a request to fund this project among a few other of our transportation infrastructure projects. And we did receive an update today that the Senate did include full construction funding for this particular project in the Senate bill. That, of course, now goes to conference committee and needs to get worked out with the House and then ultimately signed by the governor. But that's a good first step to know that it was included and passed by the Senate, the full funding amount. So, as Kevin mentioned, there's some good opportunities out there to completely fund this project, and we will, of course, pursue all those avenues.
So under this project, so with Woodard and Curran, so there are two alternatives, it seems to me, ways to repair this. It's either to the regrade and so it's alternatives 1 and 2. So are they going to, how are they going to be doing the scoping for this work? Do we have to select an alternative, or
yes, the scope is based on moving forward with the sheet pile and nature-based solutions beyond that. Basically, the extending the slope would be filling into the Charles River, which would basically open up a different criteria for permit regulations.
Okay.
As that's
What would that be, Kevin?
You would have to go through MEPA, do a water quality cert. So you're adding probably a few months and at least, probably $10,000 to $20,000 in additional permitting. It's a navigable waterway, so the Army Corps permit probably would go up in that case as well.
And with regards to the impact on the people who live on Claybrook and the people who use Claybrook as a cut through, would the project, is it possible to proceed with the project, keep one lane open, or do we have to close the roadway?
Without engaging any further in any design, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that. Basically, it'd be kind of the construction means and methods would be up to the contractor. I would anticipate there's a possibility for sections that would have to be completely shut down, as they would probably be extending both lanes of basically full depth reconstruction on this roadway. So I think it would be safer to say that it would be shut down. But without further investigation and further design, it would be kind of too premature to answer that.
No, I think it's very important, as we've tried to do for the past several years from a messaging standpoint, is to get ahead of this in the form of messaging to the various people that live at different ends of Claybrook, and for the residents that use it as a pass through on a daily basis. So I do understand your reluctance to give it a full detail with this, but I think from a communication standpoint, it's something that I want to be ahead of, and specifically want to give people ample time to set their expectations properly.
Yeah, understood. And those during that 8-month duration of the additional survey and design, those there'll be those opportunities to communicate and update the board as we have more definitive answers.
Kevin, could you go back to, I think, the second slide? Yeah. So it looks like the guardrail is literally right on the edge of the slope. And if you do the pile sheet, will you have the roadway and then plus, let's call it a breakdown lane, and then the sheet pile? Will you actually be able to provide a lot more erosion protection, a little bit wider road? Is that envision that in this plan?
There's probably a potential, but again, until they really further look into it and start actually putting the pen to the paper, we wouldn't be able to give you that answer. I would imagine it will extend a couple feet beyond that guardrail. Basically, you can almost see at the bottom of that pillar there is actually a post, and that's all concrete. So they didn't drive that guardrail in very far. So I would not test that with any vehicle.
Yeah, no, we had the same sort of setup as on Pine Street by the pond, where the very steep slope and it's erodes with the rain. And so my point is to contrast putting in the sheet pile with regrading. I mean, regrading is going to erode, yes?
Well, the sheet pile would
How
not.
quickly
So,
has this happened?
yeah, the sheet pile would also provide tiebacks into the existing earth to provide that, basically that from this caving, it would provide another form of support. Basically, so the only thing really on the outside would be the shoreline really eroding. It wouldn't have the vehicle, the pressure from all the vehicle traffic basically pushing into an unstabilized bank is really what happened here.
Okay. And we talked, there's been several discussions at the board about MVP. And this, to me, this is sort of endemic. This is the future if we're going to have downpours and droughts and all the rest of that stuff. So we're going to have to be very serious about sort of the sustainability of the solutions that we put in. Did that impact your decisions around 1 and 2?
Both are viable options. Basically, just adding an additional slope is going to create a big hurdle, and there's no guarantee that permitting will be permissible. Filling in any navigable waterway it creates its own hurdles, and like I said, different obstacles in permitting. So, without it, to me, this is the more prudent decision to make to move forward in this direction. As there's only basically 400 feet of shoreline that need protection, and if you open it up a little bit farther, basically that water quality cert comes into play too when you open that footprint up, and the magic number is basically under 500 feet of longitudinal disturbance. So, and we're kind of proposing basically going 450 feet. So there'd be an additional 25 feet of nature-based solution beyond the sheet piling in each direction.
Thank you again.
So are there any more questions or comments? So there being none, I move to authorize the town administrator to execute the professional services agreement between the town of Dover and Woodard and Curran for professional and/or engineering services related to the Claybrook Road Bank Stabilization Project.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. We're on a roll with streets tonight, I guess. So the next item of business here is a complete streets presentation and potential vote. And I guess this complete streets is a program through the Commonwealth. So we're going to learn a little bit about that this evening.
Thank you, Kate. So my second presentation tonight is about potential vote to engage the town of Dover in the Complete Streets funding program offered here in the Commonwealth through MassDOT. Next slide, please. So the what and why, what is Complete Streets? It's basically a program to facilitate better pedestrian, bicycle, and transit levels for all users, ages, and abilities. It's to basically to look at all these opportunities for upcoming infrastructure and construction projects within the town of Dover, where we can add multimodal abilities and entities on those projects. They do it by way of encouraging municipalities to adopt strategic and comprehensive approaches to complete streets. And they do this by way of providing monetary incentive for technical incentives, for technical assistance and incentives, for the adoption of complete streets policies within the town. So the funding for technical assistance for complete streets, they authorize up to $38,000. And for up to construction, you can be engaged and get up to approximately $400,000. Next slide, please. So currently 80% of the Commonwealth is at some level of complete streets. As you can see, Dover right there, our closest neighbor would be Medway, that hasn't participated. And they've delved out over $62 million in granting for this program. Next slide, please. So this program's a three-tiered program. The first tier is gauged on training and complete streets policy development. Second tier, is for complete streets prioritization and the plan development. And the third tier is for project approval and a notice to proceed. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, could you go back one? Skipped over my own notes. So as of today, we'd create an account. The DPW would be the representative for Dover. I've already read the program guidance. I've already completed the 301 transit street design training, and I'm scheduled to attend the Complete Streets 201 training on September 13th and 14th, which is a requirement of the submittal. So with that said, beyond that, the next steps would be the board would sign off on the letter of intent to adopt a policy. After we submit that, we would apply to receive the $38,000 of technical assistance. And then step 3 would be to draft and adopt that policy and concurrently work to develop a prioritization plan. And then finally apply for the construction funding. Next slide, please. So that's a draft of what they include and basically what they would like to see, which was provided in your packet. We would submit that upon your approval into the portal for Complete Streets. This would allow us to apply for that grant for the $38,000, so then we can engage with a traffic consultant and to work with the prioritization plan. And then the next phase would be to do concurrently work on the Complete Streets policy on Tier 1. So we would consider Complete Streets adopting a policy. I've worked on one in my previous township. And basically it's a flexible approach. The metrics is basically you have to, MassDOT has a score sheet and your policy has to score an 80 or above. But you also want to take into consideration, Dover scenic roads and stone walls in that, the feasibility for some of these projects and applicability for some of these projects just won't be there. Basically, whether, the right of way for the roadways are too small and we can't extend a shoulder and it's just not practical. So there are ways, as provided there in the exceptions for things that basically, not every road it would be a good candidate for adding a bike lane or adding a sidewalk.
Kevin, I'd like to see that scorecard.
Sure, I can provide that to you, John. Next slide, please. So basically, this is an example of when I worked on my past township. There would be an opportunity where we would create a complete street advisory group. We'd be looking to appoint one of the board of selectmen to be a liaison of that group. And then myself and Mr. Dwelly would create an internal Dover team with that liaison to kind of produce projects that we see as good candidates. For these prioritization plans, they typically want to see 15 projects and prioritized in the way the town would like to proceed. And also I should note that part of this program incorporates a public meeting, and we could also concurrently put out a survey monkey or something like that where we can engage the residents of Dover prior to that meeting to submit projects that they'd like to see on this prioritization plan. Next slide, please. And then tier fund would be to apply for the construction funding. The project on top was in Westwood, and the bottom is in Tewksbury. And these were obviously a roadway regeometry and a new intersection with street lights and pedestrian crossing improvements. Next slide, please. So again, I reiterate, tonight I'd be seeking approval through the Board of Selectmen to approve the submittal of the letter of intent that we would like to become a participating member in the Complete Streets program. And I should have added on there that I'd also be looking for the Board of Selectmen tonight to appoint a liaison to work on the future Complete Streets advisory group that Mr. Dwelly and myself will assemble. And then basically once around September, we would anticipate having a draft back to the board of the policy for acceptance, the Complete Streets policy for acceptance. And then potentially in November, MassDOT would approve the policy, and then we'd be able, prior to moving on to the project prioritization plan. So that would be for tier 1 and tier 2. In August, we'd be looking to seek the technical grant for $38,000, and we received that sometime in September. And then once we received that, we would execute a contract with the design engineer, traffic consultant, and begin the project prioritization planning. And then sometime in January, we would be looking to submit the tier 2 project prioritization plan to MassDOT, with hopefully seeking approval sometime in March, with the anticipate of applying for the $400,000 of construction funds in May when they open up the next round. That is the end of my presentation.
So I have a couple of questions, Kevin.
Sure. Yeah.
So once you, once you begin in this program and you commit, or you sign the LOI and then you develop your policy, are you committing to investing in this type of infrastructure? So, you're going to have your policy, then you're going to get $38,000 and put a plan in place and then prioritize that plan. So by enrolling, are you committing financially to this plan and completing this plan in a certain amount of time?
No, you're only committing to those projects you choose after the prioritization plan that would fall within that $400,000 grant.
Okay, so you don't have to spend money in excess of the $400,000 grant.
No, if say this only fulfills 5 projects that we've identified, then that would be it. And like I said, it would be the verbiage in there to make sure it's basically, if we're redoing the Central Ave Bridge, we'd be looking into widening that so we could add bike lanes and those type of opportunities. So such as using our Chapter 90 money to go repave a roadway. Well, we're not extending the shoulder of the roadway and filling in wetlands and that sort of thing. So we have to be careful in the language that we write, that basically not every construction project, we will evaluate if it's feasible or not.
So then how does this, so what exactly is the policy saying that you create? Is the policy just basically saying that you're committing to bike lanes, etc.? I mean, what is the policy that you're creating?
The policy is that the town would have a complete streets policy. So basically, when we engage in these projects, we would review these opportunities if they are there or not there. What I was stressing at that expectations there is there are certain opportunities that they're just not going to be there. We will evaluate if it's feasible or non-feasible. So basically, we're committing that future endeavors the town takes on, we'll look to see if it's feasible to apply complete streets to those projects or not.
Right, and I kept thinking while you were giving your presentation, I kept thinking about the master plan, that the planning board put together and how this would interplay with that. So I would imagine that the planning board would be a big part of working with us on what the projects might be. Is there a disconnect in my thought process here?
No, typically you would have the police department, fire, planning,
Okay.
board of selectmen liaison, and others. If we had, our town engineer would probably be involved as well. So those would definitely be the key stakeholders. So no, you're not wrong to assume that.
Kevin, are there other towns that have used the streets program to create roadways for cyclists that were adjacent to but not on the streets, like the Minuteman Path or any of the heavily trafficked roadways that are not for cars?
I don't have that definitive answer, but I would assume it's yes, because pedestrian and bike network connections are one of the eligible projects. So shared use paths and separate bike lanes are eligible. So I don't have a community to tell you, but I'm sure someone has utilized it for it as it's an eligible project.
There's, as you know, or you may not be familiar with because of the tenure on the job, that the bike path, the green bike path that has been proposed in Dover has needed funding since the Board of Selectmen got it approved and got the lease segmented at the MBTA. Weston used part of a number of different grants to get their bike path over different parts of the town that was not part of their bike path greenway. So I was just wondering if potentially there'd be an opportunity to do that.
Yes, I believe that answer would be yes.
But the grant, I think, if I heard you correctly, requires connectivity and the town and what town meeting. My interpretation of the approval we got at town meeting was that we could not really connect to the other two rail trails. But it's a segue. It's probably a discussion we should have at another meeting, the rail trail, but not this evening, I guess. Bob, do you have any questions?
I don't. What's the driver? What problem are we trying to solve, and what's the driver for this?
The driver is basically it's a free cost opportunity to do construction improvements within Dover and improve any stop gaps in sidewalk or potentially redo our intersection. We could redo that entire intersection, new mast arms, improve the pedestrian crossings and vehicle flow, and add Opticom, and that would be an eligible project. So if that was a $400,000 project and that's the way the town decided to prioritize it, that could be our one and only project. So we're just trying to pursue an opportunity for opening up multimodal use within Dover.
So then the second question is, I was talking to Chris the other day, and we seem to have a lot of projects on our list for the FY23 year, and I certainly would. My take on this is this is one of the projects. We're going to have a meeting at the end of July to prioritize projects, and I would prefer to wait until we actually sit down and do that before we make a commitment tonight to this particular program. Everybody's silent.
I don't disagree with you, Bob. I'm just trying to get my arms around it a little bit more. I mean, Chris did send me a link that I looked at, and Kevin's presentation was really helpful because I was very focused on bike paths, which was sort of the wrong focus. So it probably does make sense just to, I don't want to turn my back on free money. And to Kevin's point, you can use it for various upgrades to the current town infrastructure. So we shouldn't turn our back on that and definitely look at that, but maybe I wouldn't mind a little more time just to think about it. I don't know if John feels differently.
Kevin, are there penalties on waiting, and is there a first mover advantage on doing it now?
No, there's different cycles for the funding. So, the next one I believe is August. So that was the goal we were trying to meet. And then if we push it off, it's probably going to be around the spring. It has basically 2 concurrent cycles each year. So the funding's there every single year. Obviously pushing it off, I would just imagine projects would go up in cost.
So that would be, Robin, that would be my fear. Is I can think of 15 intersections in Dover that are candidates to be considered, and that are places where we could use this type of help. And my fear would be, if we didn't move now, you probably wouldn't get into the queue until next year, as Kevin suggests, and that just moves the whole timeline back. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm not concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is whether or not we have how much capacity we actually have to do projects. And I really do think, again, I don't really understand. A couple of questions were answered. It's not clear to me exactly what we're talking about. And I would really like to be a lot more clearer about what kind of projects and what we expect to get done and what our capacity is to do that kind of work. And I wasn't impressed with Westwood. So that's just an aside. So again, my preference would be to have more time to understand exactly what we're targeting, what kind of projects, what are the expectations of people giving us, quote, free money to what it is that we should or shouldn't be doing. Because I don't necessarily like to have a hand on my shoulder saying, do this, do that. And I don't think, from the presentation was fine, but I'm not quite clear in my mind, sort of exactly what we're planning to do. So if you can sign the letter of intent and just say we're going to figure it out, that's one thing. But if we're committed in some way, shape, or form, then I think I personally need more time.
You're committing that we will adopt a policy. There's no timeline on when we're going to adopt the policy. So if that helps with your clarity on that. So that's an estimated timeline to meet that next funding cycle, that I would have that draft policy with the advisory group back to the board for review.
Again, I take into account that Dover's not like many other towns.
So how about putting together a draft policy is something the town would do, so there would be no cost to that, correct, Kevin?
That's correct.
So, and I think taking a look at the policy would be really helpful to me to better understand the program. So, and we have a meeting in August, and the timeline was to get us a draft policy to look at. So why don't we keep the ball going and understand, it will give us more clarity into what Kevin's trying to do. We know there'll be input from others in the community, and then we can just vote our intent then. And that way you're not stalling the program at all, and we're still moving it forward. And for me, I know I feel like I have cobwebs in my brain, and it's a little foggy. I just don't get this. So I'm assuming, so perhaps with the policy, it would be crystal clear to me, or with some ideas that you might have, Kevin, of some projects, that could help. But I don't want to stall it, so why don't we try? Why don't we keep moving it forward? I don't think we have anything to lose if we bring together a team to pull together a draft policy. Is that allowable, Chris?
Yeah. So, along that line, what if, so John mentioned, a few intersections that, are on his mind, and, Kevin mentioned a few projects. What if we were to take the next couple of days and a week or so and put together some of those projects, right? And kind of really the prioritization and what's needed there and how the Complete Streets program could help. And we'll fold that into the broader goal setting conversation that the board has in 2 weeks. And then that way we get a sense of actually what the needs are, what the level of prioritization is. And then, to Bob's point earlier, where does it fit in the grand scheme of, the priorities of the board for the next year?
I think that's great, because that way we're not saying no or delaying something. We're still moving it forward. Okay, I like that. John, do you have an issue with that?
No, that was exactly my point and exactly my comment.
Okay.
Good to go. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Thanks again.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is vote to approve the agreement between the Town of Dover Conservation Commission and agent Janet Bowser. So, Chris, who's going to be presenting here?
I'll just give you a little bit of quick feedback here.
Okay.
I see that the Conservation Chair, John Sullivan, has just joined us. Not to step over John, but just every so often the town does a review of the contracts that we have in place to make sure that the terms of the contract in terms of contract length are still valid and that we have contracts in place. As I'm sure many of you know, the town through the Conservation Commission has contracted with Janet Bowser to serve as the town's conservation agent in an independent contractor role. And so we need a contract to formalize that, and that's what's before you this evening. We did bring it before you this evening after the Conservation Commission voted on it. Statutorily, via the town's bylaw, the commission has the authority to enter directly into contracts. But given that the board appoints the members of the Conservation Commission, we just wanted to share this with you to have the board ratify it and then just move forward. So I view this in many respects just as a housekeeping item. And with that, I guess I'd offer through you, Robin, if John wanted to add anything else on this. John?
I'm sorry, was that my John?
Yes.
I just got, I had technical difficulties, so I entered in and all I heard was, and if John has anything to add, but I have no idea what I'd be adding to, so I apologize.
So do you want to, so basically what's before us right now is the contract between the Conservation Commission and Janet Bowser as the agent. So just wondering if you had, and Chris had mentioned it's really housekeeping. So just wanted to know if you had anything to add with respect to the renewal of the contract. I understand the Conservation Commission has approved the renewal of our contract.
Correct, and actually this is actually the first time that we've actually gone to a written contract. We've been, it's existing for a number of years, sort of on a handshake with a previous agent as well as with Janet. And under Chris's guidance, we tightened this up and we got it adequately funded. And so we're really looking forward to joining the rest of the professional world with this. So I'm fully in favor of this.
And Chris, is it standard just to do a 1-year contract and each year renew it? Is that sort of standard practice?
That is a standard practice. The alternative is to do a 3-year contract, the max term, and then start the process over again. So one of the other.
Okay. So I don't have any questions or comments. Bob, do you?
No, it sounds pretty straightforward.
John, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
All right, then I move to approve the agreement for consulting between the conservation agent services between the town of Dover and Janet Bowser.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Just in time, John, and now you can leave.
You know, Microsoft really was insisting I download my Windows 11. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to do that yet.
So, okay, then we may talk to you in the future. If not, we're doing our job right. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the vote and approve the contract between the town of Dover and AGM Builders LLC for the townhouse window replacement project. And Carl, are you going to be presenting that, or Chris?
Kate's going to take this one.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I can get this one. So good evening. Before you, we have a memo. The town received 2 bids for the townhouse replacement project. The opening was June 15th at 12 p.m. The lowest responsible bidder is AGM Builders, who came in at $429,000. Building Superintendent Carl Warnick completed reference checks, and they were all very positive. From their roof projects to the company itself, they all had great things to say. The architectural firm overseeing this project, SMMA, they also reviewed the bid opening and their proposal and gave us their stamp of approval. Carl, am I missing anything?
No, you hit it on the head.
All right. So tonight we are asking the board to authorize the town administrator to enter into an agreement with AGM Builders for the townhouse window project.
Bob or John, do you have comments or questions for Kate or Carl?
So, Kate and or Carl, what's the timeline likely to be?
Kate's deferring to Carl.
That's fine.
I was looking at his box. I thought that was
Exactly.
I got it.
Now, the timeline is hopefully to get it done by the end of, I believe it's November, depending on the supply chain for the windows. But if we get it moving forward now, there's a good potential will be done by the end of November. And they've also, Aegean has done multiple projects, senior housing projects with staff, with the tenants in place. And every single reference I checked, 5-star for them. So I was very pleased with it. They know the routine with it as far as, the tenants and the 48-hour notice and so on and so forth. I don't see a problem with them. They're all DCAM certified, which were required in the contract. So I'm fine with it. And I would hope to recommend to the selectmen tonight that they would approve the contract for Aegean.
Well, thank you, Carl. I just wanted to make sure that this work would be done before winter. You know, Mona likes warm weather and a warm office. Definitely need to take care of Mona.
I get that part.
All right.
The problem is the supply chain.
Yeah, yes, I know. I'll keep my fingers and legs crossed.
Well, these are all custom windows too, so,
Oh, gee whiz.
but I'm hopeful.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, in keeping with our same theme of the community center, are we doing this at the wrong time?
I don't
The
think
bid-
so.
You got two bids, one from AGN at 429,000. You got only one other at 447,000. Just the fact that we only have two bids is a red flag for me, and the fact that we don't have a whole lot to compare this to is a second red flag. The third red flag is that building costs are coming down, and they're coming down like a rock. The hindsight, looking back, the best thing that we have done for the town this year is to put the community center building project on hold. So, in keeping with that line, as I just said, is this the right time to do it?
John, if I could just speak to that. So we do have comps. This project actually was the one that we bid last year, and our estimations at that time were unfortunately lower than what we expected. So we had to go back to town meeting, if you recall, to get the additional funding for
I do.
the project. Yep. So the 5 bids that we received early last year are in the same ballpark as the cost of this bid that we see right now.
And also, if I could add, Aegean dropped their price almost $100,000 from the first bid for the project, because they were one of the 5 that bid originally.
Barry, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to ask Barry too. With us is Barry Goldman, the chairman of the Capital Budget Committee, and I know he's worked very closely with Carl on this window replacement.
Sorry, Robin.
Sure. I think one of the big things that we looked at was the energy savings that these windows offer, and we figured maybe 25 to 35% energy savings. So this bid, because it's higher, increases the number of years of payback. But we still get the windows basically paid for over their lifetime. So if we save, let's say, $25,000 to $40,000 a year, and then we get the windows paid back in say 10 or 15 years, which is what we figured in the original cost, although it was a little lower and a little faster. So it's still a good transaction based upon these numbers. It's unfortunate that the price went up, but I do have a question for you, Carl. Are the window specifications the same as when we originally looked at them? So they're basically super insulated, equivalent to very high quality Anderson commercial windows?
Yes, it's the same exact bid that we put out last year, with just date changes.
So they had a 20-year plus life, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the same window. We didn't change any of the spec of the window at all. For that reason.
Have they indicated who their supplier would be?
Nope.
Okay.
Have not.
But they have to meet the original specifications.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we have the architect on board to approve all the submittals and so on and so forth. So, no, it's not going to be a lower window value at all.
Carl,
Okay.
if you don't know who the supplier is, how can you be confident in the supply chain?
We call for Anderson windows, a specific model. So they have to supply it.
Same question. How can you be confident in the supply chain?
He did it. He
Now,
said he wasn't sure whether, he was hopeful it would get done. That's what I heard him say.
correct. Yes.
John Sullivan, could you put yourself on mute?
My apologies.
No worries.
No, I mean, they know what they're bidding on. They know the time frame. So it's up to them. Could it be delayed by a couple weeks? I can't answer that phone, that response to them. They know what they're liable for, so we just have to trust that the supply chain will come through. Because they're all custom windows.
And if not, what does that mean? If they're a month late, what does that mean?
It means we'll have to extend their contract.
Does it mean more money? Or is the contract?
No, they're still liable for the contract. If they have a delay and they need to extend their contract, then we'll bring it back before you to extend it.
Okay.
That's all.
The company is signing a contract saying that they are meeting the specifications that we are requiring in our bid spec that Barry spoke about for the price that is listed in the board's documents this evening. Now, we're targeting November. Does that mean it might be mid-November, same specs, same cost? Potentially, right? But right now, we're locked into the specs and we're locked into the price.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
Under the contract, is that a force majeure if their supplier fails to deliver on time?
I don't have the contract language in front of me.
Okay.
Is that standard procedure, Chris?
Typically. But
Barry,
there is that opportunity, right, that Carl mentioned that, supply chain issues, they come back and they say, hey, look, we know the contract we said would deliver by X date, it's going to be, 2 months out, right? We bring that back to the board. We have the conversation. Hey, look, they can continue to deliver. It's going to be 2 months. That's fine. They come back and they say it's another year, right? We can have a conversation about, does that just, put the project on hold?
Yes.
Okay.
and we have that flexibility.
We will have that flexibility in the contract.
So you'd want to not make that an indefinite force majeure issue then in the contract, I would presume.
We will ensure that the town's legal counsel has the best interest of the town as they review and finalize the contract.
Are there any more questions or comments or discussion regarding this topic?
I'm okay.
All right, then I will make a motion. I move to authorize the town administrator to enter into a contract with Asian Builders for the townhouse window replacement project.
Second.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Hi, John Jeffries.
Thank you. Now, Carl, it's up to you to get it done by November.
I heard him say September, Robin.
Oh, I would love it by September.
Carl, have you ever seen Mona when she's cold?
Yeah.
You don't want to go there, John.
You don't want to go there. She's
No,
like
you-
flip-flops.
You don't want to go there. You.
I know. I'm
All right.
well aware of it.
That's right.
Oh, there she is.
I know.
Flip-flops. Well,
Well, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone. The next item of business on the agenda is the vote to approve the license between the town of Dover, between the Town of Dover and Dover Automotive for use of a portion of 5 Winding Road. And Chris, I believe you're going to present this.
Thanks, Robin. At the board's last meeting, they asked that I have a conversation with Dover Automotive about potentially extending the license agreement that we have with that entity, given that the anticipated schedule for the community center is now likely going to be extended out sometime. So before you in your packet is the same exact, I did have a conversation, with Doug over at Dover Automotive. He did express interest in continuing his license there for as long as practically possible. So before you is the same exact license agreement that the board had had previously entered into with Doug. The only exception and the only change is that the effective date is from 7/1 to December 30th. So I did a 6-month license agreement at this point. The terms remain the same should the community center project move forward sooner than expected, and the town realizes that we need that building sooner. We're able to notify Dover Automotive and have them remove their things within a month's notice. Alternatively, if the building project is delayed, let's say over a year, we can come back to the board with another 6-month or maybe even a longer term license, depending on what's known as it relates to the community center schedule at that time.
All right, so if there are no questions, then I'm going to move to approve the license agreement between the Town of Dover and Dover Automotive. Did I do this already?
No, I'm going to ask a question though before you do it, okay?
All right.
So Chris, we talked about a month to month. Did you go to 6 months just to cut down on the paperwork?
The challenge with the month to month is that it's difficult to be able to do the month termination notice when you're on
the 30 days, right?
On a month to month contract, which is why I went with the 6 months. I thought that, a year might be a little long given the unknown with the community center project at this time. And, 6 months was long enough.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Chris, you did say that in the lease, you won't need our approval to continue it for the year, and that's in keeping with his current lease, correct?
I will need the board's approval should both parties wish to extend it beyond December 30th.
Beyond December 30th.
Okay, Robin.
All right, then I move to approve the license agreement between the Town of Dover and Dover Automotive for use of a portion of 5 Whiting Road effective July 1st, 2022.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. We appreciate you doing that. Nobody listens to Bob, so him.
If I had a pet, they would.
You need a dog. It's unconditional.
3 kids, Robin.
Yeah, well, whatever. So, Board of Selectmen updates. So I will go first and then I'll turn it over to the two of you. I did reach out to Ford Spalding and he and I are going to meet this weekend. And basically the goal of the meeting is for us to put on the calendar sooner rather than the one we have, a meeting for the Board of Selectmen and the Building Committee to meet so that we can formulate a plan to move forward with the project. And what I mean by a plan is we need to give direction to our consultants as to what the deliverables are going to be in order for us to get to town meeting. And I believe that a meeting with the building committee is really what's needed to get those deliverables in place. So what I would like is if to ask Mona to try and get an earlier date for the Board of Selectmen's meeting with the building committee, because with the Carroll Community Center building committee, because Mona, I believe the meeting we have scheduled now is the end of August, towards the end of August.
Okay.
Right, and I think when we were first thinking about it, we thought there was going to be a lot more that needs to be done. But as I think about this, what we really need to crystallize is what we need to deliver, what we want the consultants to provide us so that we can have a town meeting. And, you know, I know it's hard to believe, but all of the consultants have other clients. And so we'd like to try and get on their radar as to when we're going to need the deliverables.
Okay, I'll start working on a date tomorrow.
All right. And then Chris, I believe, and you may have this in your update, but we will begin the water project in earnest now. You know, the consultants are ready to go. I am holding things up a little bit because I need to reach out and to some of the members of the former committee, and at our next meeting, maybe in August, we will need to probably formally dissolve that committee and replace it with this new committee that we're. But those are my.
That's the Water Resource Committee, and then the Water Resource Task Force.
Right. So the task force will live, and the Resource Committee
will end.
Right.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that all the work is still covered, and I need to contact the individuals from the other committee.
Okay.
Do you have any updates, Bob?
I don't. I mean, it's I can tell you about my golf score and some of the holes I played, but it's probably boring. My focus really is to talk to Chris. We had a one-on-one this week. It's really to sort of get organized for the planning meeting. We're having that at the end of the month, 27th or something like that. And as I said earlier, there was, I forget, 7 or 8 or 9 projects that Chris and I rattled off. Okay. And so I think for me, my focus the next couple of weeks is to think carefully about what's on our plate, what's our capacity, and how do we source resources for some of these things once we prioritize. So I think that's a big deal coming up.
Okay, so Bob, I think this is probably a good time to talk about venue, especially for the first meeting, and timing. So I really can't go beyond 9:30 for these meetings. Yeah. And you had expressed, and I don't disagree, and I would be happy to do it at least for the first meeting if we wanted to do that in person. And then, potentially the follow-up meetings, we might be able to do a combination of Zoom and in person. It's just, from a logistical standpoint, it's just a lot easier for me, and I'm not sure about John, to be able to have the flexibility of doing some of these meetings on Zoom.
Okay, so I think it is important to have that first meeting together in person, because there may be a fair amount to go over. I don't recall, let me look. We have that meeting scheduled for, was it
I have it on my calendar on the 27th of July at 8
At
a.m.
8, so we're running 8 to 9:30 on that particular day.
Right, so Chris, is that problematic for you to get here by 8? No?
He
Okay.
can come by boat.
Okay.
Probably earlier is better, less traffic.
I could do earlier.
So I would be happy. Why don't we try 7:30 to 9:30?
I'm
John,
good with that.
John, are you all right with that?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then I
All right,
think.
I'll tell you what, I'll bring coffee and donuts.
Oh, that's wonderful. That you're going to spend your entire salary on coffee and donuts? Yes. Okay. And so my note on meetings was and maybe moot depending on what happens in the State House.
Right. But I just wanted to specifically address this
Okay.
meeting, and then we can
Yeah.
see what happens in the State House.
So it makes sense to do it. Get the first meeting, get through all of our issues and concerns, and then do the follow-ups
Okay.
remotely. But the advantage, I think, of being in person is the fact that you actually get feedback, and by being in person and seeing how people act and behave. The second piece of this was for us to consider going back to hybrid meetings, where people can attend remotely, as well as be in the presence. And I think that should be the standard right now, rather than Zoom, as we work our way through COVID. And I think it's particularly important when we have issues like planning, or issues like the compensation program presentation, or other more complicated matters where being together may offer a benefit. So I'm sort of tired of Zoom, and I'd like to find a way to begin to move back into this townhouse, augmented with hybrid technology. Thank you for raising that, Robin.
Okay. John?
So let's clarify the dates first and foremost. We're going to meet again on Wednesday the 27th, 8 to 9:30
Right.
in person.
7:30 to 9:30 in person.
7:30.
And Mona, can you just update the time on that one?
Yes, I will. I'll send out a memo tomorrow.
Thanks. I tried to change it, and wouldn't let me, so I would show up at 8 right now.
When's the next scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting after that?
That's in August?
August 18th, John.
And that's just a regular scheduled meeting at 6:30.
Yes.
And then to be determined is the meeting of the building committee.
Right.
And I think it's currently scheduled for the 25th, John, of August.
Correct. For some reason, I thought that we had 2 BOS planning meetings. I guess not.
We removed one.
We did one, and we said if we needed another, we'd schedule it.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
John, do you have any updates you'd like to share, or?
We had a last meeting of our open space, and the focus, as you can imagine, has been hail and what hour as the town preparation for hail is going to be. Specifically, we seem to have a lot of full plates. There's a lot of lot of miscommunication on a lot of topics that's extremely concerning to me. And I want to be absolutely sure that we're all on the same page with regards to hail and what's going to happen, what our expectations are with a town meeting specifically for hail.
So I think we're going to at some point be looking at covenant restrictions, right, Chris?
Conservation?
Yeah, the conservation restriction. Yeah, so
So maybe at that point we could also talk a little bit more about next steps.
so I had this in my update. I can
Okay. So
provide an update now or wait till my agenda, whatever the board would prefer.
Rock and roll, Chris.
Okay. So yes, just to update the board and everyone, I shared with the board this week a proposed negotiation agreement, or essentially I should say a proposed conservation restriction agreement between the town, Hale Education, and the trustees of reservations. That deliverable was the charge that the board gave me a few months back, was to negotiate a draft agreement essentially that I could bring to the board. That was a foundational document that the board could then take, review, and then continue and finalize negotiations, so to speak, with Hale. Once the parameters of that are done, then our plan was, as we talked about, was to craft our communication and public engagement plan should the board decide that they do want to move forward with a conservation restriction in some shape or form with Hale and the trustees. So at this point, what I would be looking for from the board, and it doesn't have to be this evening, but now that you have the document, my suggestion and recommendation to the board is that you at some point identify to me as a board, or Robin, you as the chair, when the board would like to meet in executive session to continue these negotiations, to talk about the document, to talk about the points, and then from there we can map out our path forward. So I know that doesn't necessarily answer John's question about communication or a commitment to a fall town meeting, which was originally discussed as an opportunity, but I think our immediate next step is for the board to review the negotiation components or the components of the conservation restriction, and make a decision as to how you'd like to move forward.
So I don't know about the other two members of the board, but I'm much better with deadlines looming. So I would suggest that we just put an executive session after the August 18th meeting, because that would force me personally to look at the CR and formulate my opinion, so I'd be in a position to discuss it then.
John, there's no, that date works, right? Middle of August?
Yeah, it does. Specifically, the CR, Amy Moot and I have spent lots of time with Chris back and forth and back and forth. We've put a lot of hours and a lot of time into this, and this is something we have thoroughly reviewed.
Okay, so that would be, so we have the executive session, we discuss the CR, and next steps, yes?
Yes.
Should we include Amy in that discussion?
I think so. I think it would be helpful. I'm not sure if that is against protocol, but I think in terms of institutional knowledge, the three of us of this document, Chris, I, and Amy have spent a lot of time with it.
And my other question would be, our friends at Hale, they're in the loop. They know we're working on this. They're happy with the pace. They understand.
Chris has kept them in the loop. Chris, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just want to confirm what John has said. I've kept them in the loop, and actually, I have a regular check-in with Eric and Rob from the trustees every week.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
So I have some reading.
Me too. Yeah, John and Amy don't.
Right, right. We have reading.
And what is that, the 18th? Is that what they said, we said?
Right. You have a month.
Okay. Good. I lost somebody. Who did I lose?
We lost Chris, so
Yeah, we just
John,
lost his face. He's
oh, John, are you done with your update? Should we move to the town administrator update?
Yes.
Okay.
What'd you do? Go inside?
Yeah, just a quick change of location.
The mosquitoes were getting to him.
Mix it up, yeah. That's right.
There's been no confirmed cases of West Nile virus on the Cape yet, so
I hope not to be the first.
yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. Just a few quick updates for the board. I know that you just talked about the goal setting session, and I just wanted to notify the board and let you know that I'll have the proposed materials for your goal setting session to you next week, well in advance of the 27th. The next item is just wanted to share that the Board of Assessors met this week and both approved and then therefore by default confirmed the board's vote to move forward with the highway garage rooftop solar array project. So now that that has the necessary approvals, we're going to get the team together and construction will commence shortly. Wanted to also share with the board that we received a $65,000 culvert grant award from the state that allows us to do feasibility study to look into replacing the Willow and Dedham Street culverts. So that's really great news that we're getting those funds from the state to be able to take care of that project. I know that that's been or to start the project. I know it's been a long-standing item and priority for the board. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that our municipal project manager recruitment is about to start in earnest. Our posting closed on July 7th. We received 13 applications. We're going to move forward with a preliminary phone screen of 7 of those applicants on Monday. If all goes well, we hope to have somebody in place by, as early as mid-August.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
That would be wonderful.
Big shoes to fill, though.
Yes.
Yeah. We all know that. Yeah.
Chris, can I add one more thing to that update, just with regards to items that have come up this week, and Carl's still on, so he could comment. As we look at moving the solar project along, and we think about the roof project that has to go prior to the solar project and all of the items, mechanical items that it entails, Carl and I spoke a couple of times as a follow-up to the air conditioning system, the air conditioning unit at the highway. We've had numerous complaints over the years. It's very loud. It's on the residential side of the building. We've looked at the idea of moving it to the other side of the building. We've discussed the opportunity to put some type of a noise reduction system around it. Additionally, the generator alarm cannot be heard inside the building. Carl and I have discussed that in the past. It goes off regularly. The air conditioning system was out yesterday. Carl brought it back up. It had to be run all night to bring the building from 87 degrees down to, a temperature that even Mona would be comfortable with. But we say these things with tongue in cheek, but it's a good opportunity, Chris, for us to put them all on an agenda, to have the Board of Selectmen vote on them, so we can be proactive rather than reactive with these items that come along with big projects. Could you give me your thoughts on that, Chris?
Sure. Yeah. So if the board has questions as it relates to the current AC system and the working shape that it's in and the fixes that are required, I'll certainly defer to Carl to talk about what he's doing to fix those. As it relates to resident concerns with the noise level of of infrastructure on a municipal facility, the board can certainly instruct me to look into, what it would take to reduce that noise level. John, you mentioned, pretty much what the options would be, putting a noise dampening barrier around the unit. I think, and then the other one would be moving the unit. The only thing that I'd say, we can certainly look into those options. The one thing that I would say is that it would not be possible to tie moving the AC unit with the solar project. That's a separate effort and a separate contract with Select Energy. I don't know if it would even entail needing to do anything with the roof if you would have to move it, but that would be part of the analysis, right, or the research that we did on what it would take to reduce or eliminate the noise level that residents are experiencing from the highway garage. But I just need I take direction from the board. So let me know what you'd like me to do.
Carl, do you have any comments on that?
Sure. We've looked at the noise levels years ago because it's a 10-ton unit outside the building for the AC. We tried dampening it, didn't change the sound in the exterior part. The only thing I could say about the AC is I'm hoping to get it changed to a smaller unit. I did, John, however, check the timers, and I knocked it down from 7 o'clock this morning. I knocked it down from 7 to shut it off till 5 to shut it off because the building is still occupied at 5 o'clock. As you are aware, we have done tests previously to cover the unit with coverings. It didn't change the noise level. So I looked into putting a blanket around the compressor. The newer style compressors are more quiet. I just put 2 5-tons at the townhouse outside a window, and concern I had was the occupancy. If it bothers the employee because the units were never there, this is for the HVAC system that I upgraded for the town hall in the great room. She doesn't even hear it because it's not a 10-ton unit. So with going forward, when we are scheduled to change the highway, which it will be coming, to heat pumps and AC, that the noise level of the compressor will not be as loud. As far as the generator is concerned, the alarms go off because the temperature in the block heater gets too low because the heat pump that keeps it circulated needed to be replaced. And you can hear the alarm inside the building as well as outside the building. And as I told you last night, I will be more than happy to sit down and talk about it.
So Carl, is the AC unit scheduled for replacement, in the capital budget?
As it comes up, I've been replacing the units year by year. I don't know what year it's scheduled to be replaced. That's one of the newest units that we have in the town buildings. So it's probably towards the latter end of it to replace it.
Okay. So it's a new unit, but it's a loud unit.
It's a 10-ton compressor. So in the past, it's not been able to regulate the night setback, which I upgraded 4 years ago to shut it off but it still maintains a certain temperature in the building at night. And if the building, as what happened on yesterday, the AC went down, it was 87 degrees in the building, so it took a lot longer, or 2 nights ago, it took a lot longer to cool the building down.
And so are we getting complaints from residents since it's on the residential side?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's historically, Robin, been the issue, and as Carl explains, it's pretty clear. It's the unit itself is significantly larger than any other unit that we have in the town, and the inside. So it's a matter of if you're inside a building with the air conditioning on, you have the windows closed and you don't hear it. If you're across the street and you have your windows open, then you hear it. It's just, how sound travels. So it's been an ongoing issue because of the proximity of the Meeting House Hill Association houses. They're above the hill. The sound travels up the hill, and it's way louder up at the top of the hill than it is inside the building. So it's just the physics of where it's located.
And it's also, John, just so you know, it's bouncing off a metal building.
That too.
So it's going to be even louder.
So Robin, think of it as it's about 10 times larger than your home, but it's got to be that big to keep a metal building. Think of a metal building gets really hot. That's why we're putting the solar panels on the top of the roof. So for all the reasons that it's a good place to put solar panels, it's a tough building to keep cool, and then the noise bounces off of the metal building to the top of the hill.
Yep.
Maybe we should have, Carl, maybe there are other solutions that instead of having one unit, we have a distributed system of some sort.
You could run 2 5-ton units and they're quiet.
How about, Carl, is it possible, like at my house and probably at Bob and Robin's house, we split the unit? We have one unit literally on one side of our house and one unit on the other side of the house. And I see that a lot. Can we do that at the highway?
Anything can be possible.
So maybe there's a little homework, Carl.
You could put the whole unit on the other side. It all depends on what you want to pay.
Right. So perhaps this should be an offline discussion so we can move the meeting forward.
This is a fun one. Okay.
You might want to invite Barry. He may have some suggestions. It's his.
Yeah, I think that's right. See if there are other, taking advantage of newer equipment or modern technology or the building, etc.
As Carl said, anything's possible. It's just how much money do you want to spend? So.
Exactly.
It's really, Robin, it's the proximity of the residents to that particular unit.
Right.
It's closer than any other proximity of residents to any of the towns, with the exception, as I pointed out and we talked about, at the Carroll, you're putting even a bigger unit closer to residential. That's why I am not in favor of that design at all.
As far as the generator, John?
Yeah, the generator and the air conditioning unit on top of the roof, Carl, at the Carroll.
Yep. But that's also their rooftops, so they're up higher than what presently the AC compressor is at the highway.
Yeah.
It's ground level. And like I said, we 4 or 5 years ago, I looked into putting blanket insulation over it for the compressor because it's a big compressor. We physically covered it with like a half of a shed over it. We took an old wood structure shipping box and covered 3/4 of it, it didn't make a difference. It's just a very loud unit. And like I said, the newer ones now are a lot quieter.
So, to the extent we're getting complaints from residents, let's think about, what are potential solutions and how much they cost.
That compressor is generally about 15 feet away from John's property line. That's how close it is. And the residents.
I don't even like there's a compressor right next to my window of my bedroom for a section of the house, and it disturbs me and is probably not nearly as noisy.
Loud as this one. Yes.
So then let's see if we can take a look at options for this particular.
Right.
I will jump all over it.
Great.
All right. So then how about we move to the consent agenda?
I don't know if Chris finished up.
That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, so why don't we move to the consent agenda? So in the consent agenda is a vote to declare the fire department property of worn hoses and dated generator as surplus items. A vote to approve the increased IRS mileage rate from 58.5 cents to 62.5 cents effective January 1st through December 31st, 2022. Approve one-day special liquor licenses for July 7th and 9th. Those are retroactive. There's one for today, the 14th, the 18th and the 19th, the 20th, the 21st. There are two on the 21st, the 12th, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 28th, and the 29th. August 4th, 11th, 12th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, and to approve the April 14th, 2022 open session meeting minutes. So I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
All right, so I will then move to adjourn this meeting to enter into, I never know how to say this. So I'm going to adjourn. Am I adjourning this meeting or are we?
You're adjourning this meeting to enter into executive session, not to return to open meeting, not return to this meeting for the purposes of negotiation.
Thank you, John. And and we need a roll call vote for that. I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Hi, John Jeffries.
All right. So good night, everybody, and we should dial into the executive session meeting.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes.
All right. Good night, all.